Welcome to today's episode of Bytesized-leadership. I am your host Manish, and today we are diving deep into a topic that every leader, innovator and builder needs to pay attention to. How to build trustworthy and scalable AI through the right data foundation and governance practices. And to help us unpack this, we are joined by someone who has not only led large-scale data and AI transformation, but has done it across finance mission-driven organization and global ecosystem. Suba is a seasoned data and technology leader with over 20 years of experience building enterprise data and AI strategy, governance framework, and a scalable analytics capability that delivers measurable real-world impact. She has led high-stake and privacy-forward program impacting millions and continue to shape how organizations approach responsible AI. She has also an active thought leader for Forbes magazine, contributing as a global speaker and a strong advocate of people-centric transformation and data literacy. Suba, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you for the warm intro and the welcome. And it's a pleasure being here with you on the podcast. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. So Suba, you have had a richer career spanning data strategy, governance, and transformation. Can you share your journey, how you got here, how your role have evolved over time, and what transformation you are seeing in data and governance as we move deeper into this AI era?
Absolutely. Like you pointed out earlier, I started my career in the finance and banking sector. And when I started, I didn't realize, but later on, there was a revelation. Anyways, when I started in the finance and banking sector, I understood that they had strong data practices.
Right.
Data practices in finance and banking sector are non-negotiable, right? Because of
Right.
regulatory compliance and their very regimented and strict reporting demands. After more than a decade, it wasn't
Right.
until I stepped outside of finance into not-for-profits and education and other global mission-driven organizations that I saw how inconsistent the data hygiene, data management, and data governance could be. Up until a few years ago, data governance and management was, often treated as an ancillary function, right?
Right.
It was like a nice to have. And I remember where I was frequently, sometimes the only voice in the room, emphasizing why data quality and data ownership and proper data governance practices mattered. But with the rise of AI, data management and governance have moved front and center almost. Today, this transformation especially is very clear across three areas. One, we are
Right.
transitioning from data being owned by one central data team to an enterprise-wide enablement model. So organizations are shifting away from this idea that data sits within one team, but rather providing the self-serve models, right, with clearly defined ownership across the business, or at least that's their goal.
Right.
Secondly, governance is shifting from what it used to be a compliance-driven model to an outcome-driven model. So governance
Right.
is no longer just about risk mitigation, but rather it is increasingly tied to delivering measurable business value. And on top of that, three, AI is an accelerant, meaning the rapid growth of AI products has made high quality, consistent, and well-governed data foundation almost a foundational requirement and no longer just an afterthought. So that's the kind of transformation that I'm seeing over the years as I moved from, finance and banking stress sector into where I am right now today.
Right. I totally agree with you. So my next question is again related to governance. So many organizations are diving into AI, but few talks about importance of governance. Why do you believe that data and governance are so fundamental to AI? And why can they no longer be an afterthought?
This is a wonderful question, right? Because I know people are now talking about so
Right.
much about AI, the data, and then, some are talking about how data governance is important, but how many are really doing it? How many are really understanding it, right? Because coming from the data space, and if you think about it, the finance and banking sector has actually advanced so much in their AI
Right.
journey, right? As opposed to so many other industries, going back to what I mentioned, where it was not necessarily by choice, but rather by the regulatory compliance and this demand that they had to get their ducks in a row, their data ducks in a row, I call it, that they are now all set or settled in a way that they can make that leap and bound with AI. So at
Right.
least taking that also into perspective, because you already have like an example that's already played out itself very well, governance in AI can no longer be just an afterthought, right? Because AI becomes a trusted enterprise capability and not just a
Right.
collection of disconnected pilots and experiments, only
Right.
when it is supported by data that is as strong underneath it. And governance is what ensures that the data has its highest quality, the lineage, the source of the data, right? The tracking of where the data comes from, how it's being used, how it's transforming, transparency within that box, and the reliability. Without that structure, even the best models becomes fragile. There's bias and It's impossible to scale. The other aspect is when we talk about AI, it's also change management, right? Because you're
Right.
now progressing to a different kind of working. So governance is not just about control, but governance is also a very powerful change engine, right? In
Right.
most organizations, what we see often is, data ownership is highly siloed, and
Right.
governance brings all these data owners to the same table, right? And not necessarily to take the power away from them, but rather to give them such clear visibility and a shared language and a transparent understanding of how their verticals connects to the rest of the enterprise, right?
Right.
It's almost like a well-designed governance framework gives them a common sandbox to play in. It's a shared, trusted environment where
Right.
teams can now put their hands in, experiment, innovate, and operationalize AI responsibly, all the while preserving still the autonomy of their own verticals. It's very important that AI especially does not happen in isolation. It's very
Right.
important that these data silos are broken and governance forms that thread and making data the foundational element, but
Right.
also a transformational process.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you. And people always say this quote that there is no AI strategy without having a proper data strategy in a place.
Exactly.
So my next question to you is, when an organization is looking to launch or scale AI, how it can ensure that initiatives move beyond pilots and proof of concept into real sustainable adoption?
Right. Yeah. And that's one thing we're seeing very often, right? Like people, every company is now almost, I would say, leadership is in pressure to deliver something with AI, right? And often you have, oftentimes we go and leadership's like, we want AI, but they have not much idea on exactly what to deliver with AI, right? And that's
Right.
one of the core issues. Also, there's this disconnect with the people that are actually doing the sausage making, right? So it's very important before we actually jump into building an AI or even a POC and a pilot. It's important to take an approach. And I do three distinct things that I think are important. One is ensure that whatever you're doing is aligned to the business and aligned to your organization goal.
Right.
Right. Because, say, for example, it's very easy for me to come and say, hey, we can build an AI model that can predict new customer segments. And that sounds really
Right.
exciting, right?
Yeah.
But let's say if the organization goal is actually to ensure that we give deeper engagement or retention is more
Right.
important to them, because it takes a lot of resources to actually expand to exist to new customers. So retaining existing customers is their higher priority. That means
Right.
the real value may lie in understanding what products or experiences will deepen their existing customer engagement and loyalty, right? So
Right.
it's very important that we understand the business goal, because AI only creates impacts where it's aligned to the right business outcomes, right?
Right.
The second aspect is ensuring readiness. We can all go in, build something, and then you know what? Either it is not ready because there are issues down the road, or it's not ready because people are not ready to adopt it. So it is extremely important before we start off to ensure the data readiness and stakeholder readiness.
Right.
So from a data readiness perspective, it is absolutely important to understand what data exists right now,
Right.
whether the data that we need exists, it's accessible, and it's of sufficient quality. Because
Right.
even the strongest use cases will fail, like I said, without the right data foundation. And too
Right.
often, without doing this, when teams jump into developing an AI model
Right.
and later only to discover significant data gaps, now they're forced into reactive fixes, or going and acquiring some external data from external data provider to fill in the holes, right? At this
Right.
point, if you think about it, we're no longer strategic. We're actually into a firefighting mode. So
Right.
a deliberate data readiness assessment upfront will prevent all of this and keep the initiative grounded in reality. And from the readiness perspective, the other aspect is a stakeholder readiness, right? Because I
Right.
would say equally or even more important is a stakeholder readiness, is this ensuring that your stakeholders have the data fluency and the openness to this AI-driven change.
Right.
Stakeholders are not bought in, right? Or they don't think it's going to be giving them valuable benefit. Sure, they might participate in your discovery sessions. They will, give you all the data that you want. They will even give you the requirements that they have right now, whatnot. But ultimately, they won't be adopting the final product, right? And
Right.
that's a critical aspect where now the AI product is sitting in the shelf. So evaluating stakeholder readiness and their maturity to understand and ensure that we enable them and equip them with the right tools, the right training, the right strategies, and providing them with clarity, it's an absolutely important investment that needs to happen much ahead. Adoption is not a downstream activity, right? It's
Yeah.
cultivated from day one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the third most important aspect is it has to be practical, right? And this is where selection of the AI use cases, aligning with your org goals, but also selecting those use cases at what level, at what points matter, right? And
Right.
oftentimes it is important that you look at your absolutely most mature and well understood process and explore how AI can enhance them. When a given process is already stable and predictable, it is easier to design an AI agent that performs that one task exceptionally well, and then its output paired with a human who has done that for a long time to
Right.
verify before it flows into the next mature process in the chain, right? So this ensures trust, accuracy, and responsible scaling as your AI capability grows over time. So to reiterate, ensure business goal and organizational long-term goal alignment, ensure readiness with respect to data availability in your stakeholder readiness. And thirdly, ensure that your AI use cases are about enhancing some of your most mature and well understood processes.
Right. Yeah. I totally agree with you. So once we align the stakeholders with our idea, and once they are ready to look at the idea and adopt the AI readiness, my next question is, when we talk about AI transformation, there are some topics that don't always get enough attention. From your experience, what are the some of the most overlooked but critical factors that determine whether a data or AI initiative succeed or fail in any given organization?
Absolutely. So when people think about, why data initiatives or AI initiatives succeed or fail, the conversation, because once it's created, in postmortems, when you think about it, conversation often dives into it's straight into technology. It's probably the architecture, it's a model didn't perform well. It's its
Right.
platforms, it's tooling and all that, right? But in my experience, the biggest determinant of success have pretty much nothing to do with technology at all, right? They are
Right.
often centric to human, to the cultural, and to the ethical layers that often sit around the technology. Technology comes later, right? But
Right.
it's human, the cultural, and the ethical layers that either enable it or quietly suffocate it. And that's why I say the very first big one is change management. Most
Right.
AI initiatives don't fail because, the model didn't work. Sure, the model didn't work and all that, right? But hey, most of them fail because people weren't ready for that model, or whatever that model was doing could change and would bring that, whatever change that model was going to bring, right? There's often this inherent fear that, and sometimes even a sense of threat, right? So I
Right.
always emphasize that change management has to start much early on, not just as a communication plan at the end, but you have to show people the value in ways that feel real and that's relevant to their work, right? And
Right.
more importantly, you have to create spaces like, enterprise sandboxes where different teams can come together, experiment. They can co-create rather than simply working in isolated pockets, right? When people participate in building the future, they stop resisting it. So change management is a huge, huge, huge thing. And you're probably going to see me litter this throughout. And the second is their data fluency, right?
Right.
As we mentioned, AI is only as strong as the organization's ability to understand, to trust, and to use the data. And
Right.
what I'm seeing these days, Manish, is there is a transition, like I said, right? Governance was like an auxiliary, but now data and governance are getting like the spotlight. They all understand it's a
Right.
foundation. But where I'm still seeing the gap is now they're saying, sure, we understand all that. That's still your job, right?
Right.
Me in sales, I do the sales stuff. Sure, I'll understand my sales process. But why do I need to understand your data? That's your data. No. That's your data. Okay. That's you're in sales. It's your data. You need to understand your data. Otherwise,
Right.
what happens that when that fluency is missing, right? And I'm speaking data management language, and that's not even familiar to sales because that's not sales language. And
Right.
data being an enterprise asset, right? When that fluency is missing, fear fills the gap. There's fear of misinterpreting insights. There's fear of being judged. There's fear of losing control, right? So I've seen so many transitions or transformations get derailed simply because people don't feel equipped enough to engage with it, right? Engage with the data and the AI. So
Right.
data literacy and data fluency training into the rollout or even before the rollout, that is foundational.
Right.
The third piece that I often see why things kind of get derailed, and this happened even in a couple of places where I've worked, is having ethics and regulation as an afterthought. Like in finance, as I said, it has to be in the fabric of it. But
Right.
outside finance and banking industry, it's sometimes an afterthought. Sure, there are regulations that we have to basically adhere to. There's compliance, but hey, there's an area where many organizations are like reactive. They wait until legal or compliance actually don't raise concerns, which is a fact. But at that point, when you're putting that later, AI just can't be bolted at the end, right?
Right.
So ensuring that organizations are proactive and they build this trust not just internally but also externally through proper ethics and regulations, that will help them avoid the costly rework that comes later with the retrofitting it, right? So
Right.
I think what really people miss, and these are like subtle things, right? This is not within your technology roadmap, right? This is not within your
Right.
embedding model roadmap. So what they necessarily are missing are these subtle overlooked layers of how well can we manage change? How fluent are our people with our data and the technologies? And
Right.
how intentional are we in integrating the ethics regulatory compliance within the process of building
Yeah.
it, right? So that's what makes accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. So my next question to you is somewhere we have spent most of your time. So you have talked about your passion for helping membership-based and non-profit organization. Why do you feel these organizations stand to benefit the most from a structured data and AI strategy?
Right. So like I said, after the last decade or so that I've been in not-for-profits, but I should say even before that, I've always been in not-for-profits, right? But I was working in the finance and banking sector. I was also still involved heavily as a volunteer in many not-for-profits. In fact, there were some not-for-profits that I had been on the boards of them that I constructed from ground up, going to do the groundwork and all that. And what I love about these not-for-profits, and same for membership-based organization, is, and the reason that have the special passion is because they're so deeply mission-driven and impact-focused, right? These aren't orgs that are necessarily, chasing your quarterly earnings, right? They are truly about strengthening communities, advancing missions, supporting their members, and creating that tangible social value, right?
Right.
And what's interesting is that, on the other hand, they're also sitting on incredibly rich relationship-driven data, right? Because it is about advancing the social values. It is about impact to the society in some way, shape, or form, which means they are relationships for the most part. So they're sitting on this incredibly rich relationship-driven data, but they rarely, sometimes harness its value to its fullest potential. And that's where structured data and AI becomes so powerful. These organizations, they thrive on understanding people. Who are their members? How do their members engage? What support do those members need? How can we support them? How can we elevate them, right? And what motivates them, right? Now, just imagine, right? All of this relationship-driven data you already have, and AI can help bring that to life in a way that's so personalized and scalable, right? It can be helped in forecasting, even the usual engagement trends, identifying members who are like sort of slipping away. And when they're slipping away, why are they slipping away? How are we not serving to elevate them? What's going on with them, right? At the surface, what are their unmet needs? And even, help predict what programs or initiatives will create that most impactful or the greatest mission impact, right? It shifts the org necessarily from reactive to proactive, and it lets them serve their communities more thoughtfully and very efficiently, right? Because these organizations also operate with such a higher expectation of trust. Because they're really, right? There has to be higher expectation of trust, transparency, and accountability. Data and governance also becomes more essential now. Your members aren't just your customers, right? They're your stakeholders. They are your contributors. Sometimes they are your donors. So the ethical data use and responsible AI practices, that must be built in. Decisions be explainable. Data practices have to be transparent. Trust has to be protected every single step. And of course, they're not for profit. So these organizations, or most of them, have limited resources. They don't have the luxury of, the big budgets or the large teams, right? And that's exactly why structured, intentional approach to data and AI matters so much here. And it helps them prioritize what will truly move the needle, avoid wasted efforts, and adopt technology in a very responsible and sustainable way, right? Especially when it's done right, it can dramatically improve their operational efficiency. It can elevate member experiences. It can amplify them. And that's why, for me, the passion comes from seeing what's possible, what they're doing and what's possible, right? These organizations deliver impact, and that's why I know they have incredible potential, and the right data and AI strategy, they can unlock absolutely great insights and capabilities that can strengthen their mission and deepen their membership.
They are mostly, I would say, people-driven organization where they think more of people benefits and how they can drive more engagement with the data that they have in a place.
And how they can bring that most positive impact to the communities that they're supporting. Right. And this is where data, and there's, like I said, they're sitting on so much data, and this is where the data and AI can really truly benefit and move the needle for their communities.
Right. So great insight, Subha. So we have almost come to the end of our podcast. So my next question is, if there is one message you would want leaders to take away from this conversation, what would it be when it comes to data governance and building trustworthy AI?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you again, Manish, for all this time. So I know coming to the end of it, as we wrap up, I hope one message comes through very clearly out of all of this, if not anything. AI doesn't become trustworthy or scalable just by accident. It's built on the strength of our data, the clarity of our governance, and the alignment of our people. So governance is actually what makes AI trustworthy, scalable, and collaborative. The real challenges in AI are human. The culture, the fear, the fluency, the ethics, and the capabilities. And if you don't align the business, the data, and the people early on, it's not going to scale. So if there's that one takeaway that I want to leave you with, then that's this, right? AI doesn't transform organizations. It's people at the center and hardcore of it that do it when they are equipped with the right foundations, the right governance, the right data foundation, and the right support to build responsible and bold AI for their future.
Yeah. Subha, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, clarity, and lived experience. The biggest message I am taking away, and I hope our listeners do too, is this: AI is not as strong as the data, governance, and people behind it. If we want AI that scale on trust and drives outcome, not experiments, then we must invest in discovery, readiness, governance, and human-centric adoption. It's not just about building AI faster. It's about building it responsibly and meaningfully.
Thank you so much, Manish, again.
Thank you again for joining us. And to everyone listening, stay curious, stay responsible, and keep building smarter until next time.